We got to talk about, unfortunately, the worst piece of legislation in American history, the
Huzzah.
big, beautiful bill with some interesting news for nonprofits. This is reported by the Chronicle of Philanthropy. And George, the big change since we last talked about this bill, which had passed in the House, is that it removed the House's proposed sharp tax increases on private foundations, but college endowments are still going to face taxation at a higher rate. I think it's capped at 8%. So if you were worried about foundations, them basically using tax law to harass foundations, it looks like that's been assuaged a little bit. There's also some changes to the charitable deductions for non-itemizers. George, I'll let you opine about that, and then maybe I'll say a word about why this is the worst piece of legislation in American history.
It's kind of like celebrating because the fire put out the flood. It's ultimately, it was fine the way it was before, and now we're celebrating just to be back to neutral. So I have a hard time being at the brass band, but that's what you're doing effectively when you're on defense. The tax on foundation hopefully means that nonprofits get to see more of that money. I think some of those other changes are good, but I don't fully understand the repercussions of this. And I definitely know that the people that voted on it don't.
Yeah, George, I think that's good.
I don't know.
I mean, we don't know,
Frank,
right? We need people
great,
smarter than us. Yeah.
I think, but as you see these folks reach out, be like, I didn't know that was in the bill. Like, there's a lot of that's going to be happening for the coming months and years, frankly, as we are going to watch. I'm more frankly focused, and probably you're going to talk about the bigger cuts to Medicaid and SNAP. I'm more concerned about the elements and second order effects there than this like tax change to a foundation.
Yeah, George, we have to talk about it. Unfortunately, the bill is really horrific. Even Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski said, quote unquote, that she was agonizing over voting the bill before she then voted for it. But if enacted, upwards of 12 million Americans, George, particularly our poorest Americans, would lose their health insurance because they're losing Medicaid. This is very important. Medicaid gets branded by states under different programs. So people are going to lose Medicaid and they may not even realize they're on Medicaid. So if you are a nonprofit, make sure that you're communicating with your community that their Medicaid program is likely branded differently in the state, and that does not make them immune from the cuts to Medicaid. Again, 12 million Americans could lose their health insurance. George, 2 million more Americans would lose SNAP and food assistance benefits. They are cutting drastically food assistance and the SNAP program. This comes on top of, George, all the cuts and the rescission of funds to food banks across the country. So they're just making a bad problem infinitely worse. Also, people who are able to keep their insurance on the Affordable Care Act marketplace, the ACA marketplace, could face soaring costs there. Not to mention, George, that the bill also includes tax breaks for the wealthy, increases the national debt between $3 and $4 trillion, and gives ICE $100 billion over the next 4 years. That basically triples their budget in effect.
Yeah, not to mention the continuation of the tax cuts. So after cutting these social services for the folks that are the most vulnerable, ultimately you're making sure that you are distributing money to the top 1% in companies while also somehow running a deficit. It takes a level of mental gymnastics that is incredible to somehow allow that to happen, claim that you care about the deficit, increase it while cutting at Reagan era levels. It takes a real bit of carelessness, and it's impressive. Here's what I actually think. For nonprofits dealing with food insecurity, this is going to be felt pretty immediately. I think that goes into effect how quickly after, like the bill is going to go through. How quickly does this hit the Chicago food network, right? Like you're planning things. Is it at Thanksgiving? When does this happen? I don't actually know. I assume it's at the end of the year when the new budget things are in place, but then you're also talking about clawbacks for NPR and public radio. So there's like retroactive impacts that are happening too here.
Yeah, George, even I don't really know when the bill goes into effect, right?
It's
This is
fine.
the 2026 budget bill. But I think either way, right, it's going to immediately kind of shape markets. Food banks are already preparing to close. Rural hospitals are already preparing to close, right? This is going to decimate the rural, nonprofit, largely hospital system that's already been decimated, right? Like people will lose access to healthcare and then hospitals themselves will close. Like health workers are going offline. Not to mention, George, the fact that it pretty much decimates America's clean energy efforts. It sets us back another decade, right? Not only, George, does it take out tax incentives for clean energy, it actually imposes tax penalties for clean energy as a little bit of a wink and a nod to coal, right? Because coal is clearly the future. So, when this bill goes into effect for the budget next year, I don't really know, but we're already going to be feeling those repercussions, right? Because once this bill passes, it becomes law, and as you're driving closer to the cliff, you're trying to slow down as much as possible.
Don't worry though. Elon has promised to go after and try to replace every single Republican that voted for this bill after spending gobs of money to put all of these people in power. He's trying to hit the undo button.
Yeah, but George, it's because he doesn't think it's cutting enough. This is all we're talking about. It. There was a report published in The Lancet, which is a medical journal yesterday, that estimates that USAID since its inception has saved 92 million lives and estimates that its destruction will actually kill 14 million people. So don't really particularly think that Elon Musk is, doing critiquing for the right reasons. But either way, George, this is a tidal wave of a sea change in America's fiscal policy. It's a taking from the poor and giving to the wealthy, broadly speaking. And of course, that will have repercussions. So we shall see.